So look, in terms of what I just want to go through with you today, firstly just to talk a little bit about Swiss. Hopefully most of you or all of you are aware of the brand, but just talk a little bit about the business itself, and in particular the export journey that we've had over the last few years, and the China phenomenon in particular. Talk a little bit about the different types of partnerships that we've had to put in place to make sure that that went as smoothly as it could. Talk a little bit about what we look for in a partner, and some of the challenges that we've had with some of those partners. And then the tantalising bit at the end, the future partnership opportunity that I think is going to be really exciting for the Hort industry here in the broader agribusiness sector. So a little bit about Swiss, and this is a really busy slide, but just to sort of run you through, I guess, the history of the company. Notwithstanding the name, we're actually a homegrown Australian company, formed in the late 1960s by a slightly eccentric entrepreneur by the name of Kevin Ring. And Kevin was, believe it or not, an organic baker, and he had a little shop in Ackland Street, St Kilda. Those of you from Melbourne or who know Melbourne would know Ackland Street. It's a very famous street. And he was a baker who, in the late 60s, was getting pretty annoyed and concerned about some of the things that were happening in the food industry in terms of chemicals and preservatives and so forth. So he took himself off to Switzerland, as you do, Switzerland being in those days the mecca for all things natural, Swiss muesli, etc. Came back inspired and set up the company called Swiss. He went out and bought a pill press in the Trading Post, something that would probably get you into a bit of trouble if you did these days. But this was the swinging 60s, early 70s, so he got away with that. He started making pollen tablets in the back of his bakery in St Kilda. That was in the 60s. Really, it's a company that's grown organically through domestic sales up until a few years ago. We got really serious about our branding probably 10 years ago and started developing really strong partnerships with some big name celebrities, and we can talk about that. And then a couple of years ago, China discovered us. And when I say China discovered us, that was really what happened. We never promoted ourselves in China. We focused on having a really strong domestic brand. I'm sure many of you have heard of the phenomenon of Daigous, or the grey suitcase sale. That's really what happened to us. We had a really strong brand in the marketplace here that resonated with the Australian population, and also with the very strong and active Chinese expats and tourists. So all of a sudden, Chemist Warehouses started getting cleared out of our stock and Blackmore stock, and this was a phenomenon we just weren't ready for and weren't expecting. At one stage, we had something like 120,000 resellers of our product. We knew maybe 6 of them. That became a real challenge for us. You lose a lot of control over your products when that happens, in terms of how they're promoted and the price points. But we went with the ride, and China really took off to the point where it's probably about 40% of our turnover 2 years later. This slide's a little bit out of date now. We just booked sales last calendar year, of just under 600 mil, and 40% of that being in China. So a phenomenal ride, and one not without its challenges, particularly in terms of actually making enough product. So we've gone from having the pollen press in the back of the bakery to having about 200 different SKUs now. Our main products that we're known for are our vitamins, but we've branched off into supplements, into sports supplements, and even into skincare. And so at this stage, we've got about 200 SKUs. All of those are available in China at the moment. A little bit about the nutraceutical industry itself. This is a global industry that's just going through huge growth on the back of a range of phenomena, including some that David spoke about this morning, in terms of the growing middle class in Asia with discretionary spend. It's around a $180 billion industry that's expected to grow to about 280 over the next few years. Huge trends in preventative health, lifestyle diseases in Asia, and that growing middle class are really underpinning almost all of that growth. In Australia, the industry itself, again, really large and growing at a rapid rate, worth around about 3.2 billion, employing around about 8,000 people, including in a range of manufacturing areas, and exporting almost half of that. What's really interesting is to look at the growth patterns of the industry. We're expected to hit $5 billion in the next 2 years, so that's an extra $1.5 billion in 2 years, which is phenomenal. And you know, in China last year alone, our exports grew 36%, so a really phenomenal growth rate. 65% of Australians take vitamins and supplements. People are voting with their feet, and so even the domestic sales are pretty good. Just really quickly, a little bit about our expansion. So China is the main game for us, as I said. It's about 40% of our turnover. We've developed a partnership, a collaborative partnership with Procter and Gamble. Most people would be aware of Procter and Gamble, a large pharmaceutical company, and I'll talk a little bit about that relationship in a minute. We use them in most other markets. We're in 9 markets over the last 2 years, and we expect to be in 20 by the end of 2020. And much of that will be on the back of our collaborative relationship with PGT. So let's just move to talk a little bit about collaborative partnerships, and I guess what we mean by that. There's a couple of definitions up on the screen there. I won't read those, you can read them yourselves, but really what we're talking about here and how a collaborative partnership in Swiss's terms differs from a commercial relationship is really about skin in the game. We look for our partners to have skin in the game, to have common goals and common values with Swiss. We won't partner with people that don't have those common values, and we're looking for I guess, complementary skill sets. Swiss is first and foremost a branding and marketing company. That's been our DNA over the last 10 years. We don't own a huge amount of our supply chain, so it's really important for us to be able to collaborate up and down that supply chain with like-minded companies. So I just want to talk now about the different types of collaborative partnerships that Swiss and your companies would get involved in, and just on each of these give you a little bit of an example of some of the learnings that we've had over the past 10 years. So the first one there is branding and promotion. So to have collaborations and collaborative partnerships with sponsors, with brand ambassadors is really important to any company, and it's certainly been critical to Swiss in terms of getting a strong brand domestically. Most of you will have seen our ads and our ambassadors, and if you watch the Olympics or any sport on TV, you've probably seen a Swiss ad and you're probably sick to death of them. But it's been a really successful initiative for us. And if I had to sort of point out one collaboration or one partnership we've had, it's been with our brand ambassadors. We're really careful about who we choose. Ricky Ponting was our first ambassador 10 years ago when he was still playing. He's still our #1 ambassador now, even though he's hung up the cricket boots. And each and every one of those we choose on the basis of not just their brand, their reach, their market reach, although people like Nicole are really important